å komme seg ut derfra, men det skal ikke være.
Jeg tror det går an å kjøre rundt også.
Ja, det skal vi gjøre.
Ja.
Kan du ikke gjøre ting for lett nå, kan vi da?
Nei.
Ta til høyre.
Den, ja. Tror vi skal til Metallco nå.
Sikkert en grønning av. Du vet selv jeg kan være tilbake.
Ja, kanskje jeg kan se om jeg klarer å hakke opp den der trafen i hølet, altså.
Får de koblet den. Det hadde ikke vært så verst, det.
Nei.
Fredag, ass. Alltid kø. Har du feilsøkning bare på mandag? På tirsdag, sikkert?
Ja.
Eller begynner du på data på meg?
Nei, han sa jo det at fra onsdag så er det jo tomt for elever.
Ja, da er det best at du begynner da, egentlig.
Ja. Så jeg kunne jobba der onsdag, torsdag, fredag, kanskje.
Det synes jeg er en ganske stor jobb, kun det i kjelleren.
Så det var litt ballsy ut at punktprisen ser på...
Se på timer til det.
Ja.
Vet du hvor mye vi tar for den jobben?
Nei.
Jeg har ikke spurt ennå.
Nei.
Det burde være en del å tenke på noen av de føringsveiene.
Ja, altså han sa det at hvis det blir, vi må legge opp nye føringsveier, så blir det tillegg.
Ok, ja. Men hvis du slipper det, så blir det ikke.
Da kan du diskutere hva blir nye føringsveier med å trekke gamle rør og bore gjennom vegger.
Det vil være nye, da. For føringsveien blir ikke lik.
Nei, jeg vil se hele, eller begge de to gamle for å diskutere på mandag, eller
Mye.
Insider info on the day before. About 50% of purchases refunded the game.
Få se om Steam gjør noe tiltak da. Det kan hende de gjør det.
Og de annonserte jo sånne salg i hvert fall.
Ja.
se om jeg finner posten.
Det er ganske bra det salget som var nå. Akkurat kom nå.
Ja,
Beklager salget, Steam.
Steam responds to the day before controversy by announcing the day after sale.
Steam skal ha det, de som støtter, som bruker plattformen.
Skull Island, Rise of Kong and the Lord of the Rings Gollum can breathe a sigh of relief the day before has undoubtedly bagged the title of 2023's worst video game. Den traileren var jo bare fake da, i forhold til hva de hadde i spillet.
Det var ikke samme spill.
Nei. De bare lagde en video.
Så går vi oss ned på motorveien nå.
Ja, vi må kjøre forbi hele tiden.
Ja. Så gamle veiene.
Ja. Mot Fyrhuset, som vi har skrått opp der. Kjøper en bok. Det minner litt om den der i Mr. Bean, den der Robin-filmbilen med 3 hjul.
Ja.
Den har jo 4 den nå, men størrelsen er litt sånn nesten.
Det er jo smart at de har ikke sett mange sånne.
Ja.
Sparer sikkert er jævlig på det. Jeg ser som at det er CAD eller noe sånt.
Full betaling. Stena Recycling.
Den kan jeg ha brukt en metallgåte.
Ja.
Det er så mange her vi pleier å stikke. For folk var litt mer hyggelig, fikk jeg ut.
Ja.
Det nekter jeg til opp, for jeg sa det til ord til oss.
Ja.
Det kan ikke beskjed om å ikke snakke så mye.
Såpass, ja.
Ja. For vi kom inn etter å ha lert noe kabel, ikke sant? Skulle vi få sjekke at det var ikke. Kan jeg dempe det litt, eller? Noen bør også jobbe inne.
Summer Thunder. kuleste.
Brought to you by Penguin.
Ah, det er jo sånn at du får lov til å høre på 10 minutter, og så hvis du kjøper boka, så kan du fortsette å høre på den.
Many years ago, I saw
Smart.
a very large American lady towing a huge tartan suitcase very fast on little rattly wheels, which caught
Ah,
in the
det er en bok
pavement
som heter Erik.
and generally gave it a life of
Den
its
gleder
own.
jeg meg til å komme
At
til.
that moment, the
Nummer 9.
luggage was born. Many thanks to that lady and everyone else in places like Power Cable, Nebraska, who don't get nearly enough encouragement. This book does not contain a map. Please feel free to draw your own.
Nå skal vi på høyre siden. Jeg leder.
Gjerne med musikk, da. Ja, det er musikk.
Ja. Fantasy. Terry Pratchett sa det er jo et spill som datteren hans var med å lage, eller skrive historien på.
Ja.
Jeg skal se hva det heter. Det er sånn veldig kort spill, da, men det er en veldig bra historie. Hva faen heter det?
Det er mye kort som er noe kriminelt behandling.
Skal se. Rihanna Pratchett, hun har vært med å skrive historien til ganske mange spill, og de spillene hun har skrevet historien til er jævlig sånn.
Ja.
But the eighth son grew up and married and had its
does it contain then?
Me.
Besides you, I mean. Death gave him a puzzled look.
I'm sorry.
The storm reached its howling peak overhead. A seagull went past, backwards. I meant, said
I
Ipswich.
den verden der da, så kan
What is there
trollmenn
in this
se og
world that
snakke
makes
med døden.
living worthwhile?
Det er ganske
Death
kult.
nodded.
Så han med mørk stemme er
Said
døden.
eventually.
Cats are nice.
Curse
Han
you!
klikker på folk som behandler katter
Said
dårlig.
How much longer do I have? Death pulled a large hourglass from the secret recesses of his robe. The two bulbs were enclosed in bars of black and gold, and the sand was nearly all in the bottom.
Oh, about 9 seconds.
Ipslor pulled himself up to his full and still impressive height, and extended the gleaming metal staff towards the child. A hand like a little pink crab reached out from the blanket and grasped it. Then, let me be the first and last wizard in the history of the world
Ja, for
to
sure.
pass on
Ja,
his
skjønner.
staff
Ja,
to his eighth
Hvis det blinker.
son, he said slow and
Over
sonorous.
10 minutter. Ja.
And I charge him to use it to
I should hurry up if I were you.
the full, said Ipslor, becoming the mightiest. The lightning screamed from the heart of the cloud, hit Ipslor on the point of his hat, crackled down his arm, flashed along the staff, and struck the child. The wizard vanished in a wisp of smoke. The staff glowed green, then
Tar det
white,
helt.
and
Ja,
nearly red hot.
endelig.
The child smiled immensely. When the thunder had died away, Death reached down slowly and picked up the boy, who opened his eyes. They
Pause.
glowed gold.
I have to go up. Oh, I'll have to drive myself again. My apprentice is taking the driver's license on Tuesday, so I'm not gonna. He's gonna come back from work on back to work on Wednesday. Replay.
They glowed golden from the inside.
Now
For the first
it's
time
off
in what, for want
to
of any better word, must be called his life, Death found
supermarket
himself
so I
looking at a
can
stair
purchase some
before
beer.
hard to return. The
Hello,
eyes
Mark.
seemed to be focused on a point several inches inside his skull. I did not mean for that to happen, said the voice of Ipslor from out of the empty air. Is he harmed?
No.
Death tore his gaze away from that fresh, knowing smile.
He contained the power. He is a sorcerer. No doubt he will survive much worse. And now, you will come with me.
No!
Yes, you are dead, you see.
Death looked around for Ipslor's wavering shade and failed to find it.
Where are you?
In the staff! Death leaned on his scythe and sighed.
Foolish. How easily could I cut you loose?
Not without destroying the staff, said the voice of Ipslor, and it seemed to Death that there was a new, thick, exultant quality to it. And now the child has accepted the staff, you cannot destroy it without destroying him. And that you cannot do without upsetting destiny. My last magic. Rather neat, I feel. Death prodded the staff. It crackled, and sparks crawled obscenely along its length. Strangely enough, he wasn't particularly angry. Anger is an emotion, and for emotion you need glands, and Death didn't have much truck with glands, and needed a good run at it to get angry. But he was mildly annoyed. He sighed again. People were always trying this sort of thing. On the other hand, it was quite interesting to watch, and at least this was a bit more original than the usual symbolic chess game. which Death always dreaded because he could never remember how the night was supposed to move.
You're only putting off the inevitable.
He said, "That's what being alive is all about."
What precisely do you expect to gain?
I shall be by my son's side. I shall teach him, even though he won't know it. I shall guide his understanding. And when he is ready, I shall guide his steps.
Tell me,
Said Death.
how did you guide the steps of your other sons?
I drove them out. They dared to argue with me. They would not listen to what I could teach them. But this one will.
Is this wise?
The staff was silent. Beside it, the boy chuckled at the sound of a voice only he could hear. There was no analogy for the way in which Great Atuin, the world turtle, moved against the galactic night. When you were 10,000 miles long, your shell pocked with meteor craters and frosted with comet ice, there's absolutely nothing you could realistically be like, except yourself. So, Great Atuin
Yeah, I
swam
hear
slowly
people say
through
they like the
interstellar
snow.
deeps, like
It's,
the largest turtle that
It's
has ever
nice
been.
when it's not in the
Carrying on
road.
its carapace the 4 huge elephants that bore on their backs the vast, glittering waterfall-fringed circle of the Discworld, which exists either because of some impossible blip on the curve of probability, or because the gods enjoy a joke as much as anyone. More than most people, in fact. Near the shores of the Circle Sea, in the ancient, sprawling city of Ankh-Morpork, on a velvet cushion on a ledge high up in the unseen university, was a hat. It was a good hat. It was a magnificent hat. It was pointy, of course, with a wide, floppy brim. But after disposing of these basic details, the designer had really got down to business. There was gold lace on there, pearls, and bands of purest vermin, and sparkling Ankh stones.
Like rhinestones, but different river. When it comes to glittering objects, wizards have all the taste and self-control of a deranged magpie.
And some incredibly tasteless sequins, and a dead giveaway, of course, a circle of octarines. Since they weren't in a strong magical field at the moment, they weren't glowing and looked like rather inferior diamonds. Spring had come to Ankh-Morpork. It wasn't immediately apparent, but there were signs that were obvious to the cognoscenti. For example, the scum on the river Ankh, that great wide, slow waterway that served the double city as reservoir, sewer, and frequent morgue, had turned a particularly iridescent green. The city's drunken rooftops sprouted mattresses and bolsters as the winter bedding was put out to air in the weak sunshine. And in the depths of musty cellars, the beams twisted and groaned when their dry sap responded to the ancient call of root and forest. Birds nested among the gutters and eaves of Unseen University, although it was noticeable that however great the pressure on the nesting sites, they never, ever made nests in the invitingly open mouths of the gargoyles that lined the rooftops, much to the gargoyles' disappointment. A kind of spring had even come to the ancient university itself. Tonight would be the eve of small gods, and a new Arch-Chancellor would be elected. Well, not exactly elected, because wizards didn't have any truck with all this undignified voting business, and it was well known that Arch-Chancellors were selected by the will of the gods. And this year, it was a pretty good
Tomorrow
bet.
it's
Gods
the
would sing their way
forecast
clear to
says to be
selecting
around
old,
6
dirty, lazy
Celsius,
goose.
which
He was a
probably is
decent old boy
gonna
and had been
melt
patiently
away a
waiting
lot
his
of
turn
snow.
for years. The Arch-Chancellor of Unseen University was the official leader of all the wizards on the Disk. Once upon a time, it had meant that he would be the most powerful in the handling of magic,
But then again,
but times
more
were a
will
lot quieter
come
now, and to be honest, senior
hopefully
wizards tended to
around
look
the
upon actual magic as it pleased them.
22nd
They tended to
December.
prefer administration,
A lot of
which
snow
was
will
safe
fall then.
and nearly as much fun, and also big dinners. And so the long afternoon wore on. The hat squatted on its faded cushion in Wazy Goose's chambers, while he sat in his tub in front of the fire and soaked his beard. Other wizards dozed in their studies or took a gentle stroll around the gardens in order to work up an appetite for the evening's feast. About a dozen steps was usually considered quite sufficient. In the Great Hall, under the carved or painted stairs of 200 earlier Arch-Chancellors, the butler's staff set out the long tables and benches. In the vaulted maze of the kitchens, well, the imagination should need no assistance. It should include lots of grease and heat and shouting, vats of caviar, whole roast oxen, strings of sausages like paper chains strung from wall to wall, the head chef himself at work in one of the cold rooms, putting the finishing touches to a model of the university carved for some inexplicable reason out of butter. He kept doing this every time there was a feast. Butter swans, butter buildings, whole rancid, greasy, yellow menageries, and he enjoyed it so much you wouldn't have the heart to tell him to stop. In his own labyrinth of cellars, the butler prowled among his casks, decanting and tasting. The air of expectation had even spread to the ravens who inhabited the Tower of Art, 800 feet high and reputedly the oldest building in the world. Its crumbling stones supported thriving miniature forests high above the city's rooftops. Entire species of beetles and small mammals had evolved up there, and since people rarely climbed it these days, owing to the tower's distressing tendency to sway in the breeze, the ravens had it all to themselves. Now, they were flying around it in a state of some agitation, like gnats before a thunderstorm. If anyone below is going to take any notice of them, it might be a good idea. Something horrible was about to happen. You can tell, can't you? You're not the only one. What's got into them? Shouted Rincewind above the din. The librarian ducked as a leather-bound grimoire shot out from its shelf and jerked to a mid-air halt on the end of its chain. Then he dived, rolled, and landed on a copy of Maleficio's Discovery of Demonology that was industriously bashing at its lector. "Ook!" he said. Rincewind put his shoulder against a trembling bookshelf and forced its rustling volumes back into place with his knees. The noise was terrible. Books of magic have a sort of life of their own. Some have altogether too much. For example, the first edition of the Necrotelecomicon has to be kept between iron plates. The true art of levitatione has spent the last 150 years up in the rafters. And Eve Forge's compendium of sex magic is kept in a vat of ice in a room all by itself. And there's a strict rule that it can only be read by wizards who are over 80 and, if possible, dead. But even the everyday grimoires and incunabula on the main shelves were as restless and nervy as the inmates of a chicken house with something rank scrabbling under the door. From their shut covers came a muffled scratching like claws. "What did you say?" screamed Rincewind. "Ook!"
A magical accident in the library, which, as has already been indicated, is not a place for your average rubber stamp and Dewey Decimal employment, had some time ago turned the librarian into an orangutan. He had since resisted all efforts to turn him back. He liked the handy long arms, the prehensile toes, and the right to scratch himself in public. But most of all, he liked the way all the big questions of existence had suddenly resolved themselves into a vague interest in where his next banana was coming from. It wasn't that he was unaware of the despair and nobility of the human condition. It was just that, as far as he was concerned, you could stuff it.
Right! Rincewind, as honorary assistant librarian, hadn't progressed much beyond basic indexing and banana fetching, and he had to admire the way the librarian ambled among the quivering shelves, here running a black leather hand over a trembling binding, here comforting a frightened thesaurus with a few soothing simian murmurings. After a while, the library began to settle down, and Rincewind felt his shoulder muscles relax. It was a fragile piece, though. Here and there a page rustled. From distant shelves came the ominous creak of a spy. After its initial panic, the library was now as alert and jittery as a long-tailed cat in a rocking chair factory. The librarian ambled back down the aisles. He had a face that only a lorry tire could love, and it was permanently locked in a faint smile. But Rincewind could tell by the way the ape crept into his cubbyhole under the desk and hid his head under a blanket that he was deeply worried. Examine Rincewind as he peers around the sullen shelves. There are 8 levels of wizardry on the disc. After 16 years, Rincewind has failed to achieve even level 1. In fact, it is the considered opinion of some of his tutors that he is incapable even of achieving level 0, which most normal people are born at. To put it another way, it has been suggested that when Rincewind dies, the average occult ability of the human race will actually go up by a fraction. He is tall and thin and has the scrubby kind of beard that looks like the kind of beard worn by people who weren't cut out by nature to be beard wearers. He is dressed in a dark red robe that has seen better days, decades. But you can tell he's a wizard because he's got a pointy hat with a floppy brim. It's got the word wizard embroidered on it in big silver letters by someone whose needlework is even worse than their spelling. There's a star on top. It has lost most of its sequins. Clamping his hat on his head, Rincewind pushed his way through the library's ancient doors and stepped out into the golden light of the afternoon. It was calm and quiet, broken only by the hysterical croaking of the ravens as they circled the Tower of Art. Rincewind watched them for a while. The university's ravens were a tough bunch of birds. It took a lot to unsettle them. On the other hand, the sky was pale blue, tinted with gold, with a few high wisps of fluffy cloud glowing pinkly in the lengthening light. The ancient chestnut trees in the quadrangle were in full bloom. From an open window came the sound of a student wizard practicing the violin, rather badly. It was not what you would call
Smart.
ominous. Rincewind leaned against the warm stonework and screamed. The building was shuddering. He could feel it come up through his hand and along his arms, a faint rhythmic sensation at just the right frequency to suggest uncontrollable terror. The stones themselves were frightened. He looked down in horror at a faint clinking noise. An ornamental drain cover fell backwards and one of the university's rats poked its whiskers out. It gave Rincewind a desperate look as it scrambled up and fled past him, followed by dozens of its tribe. Some of them were wearing clothes, but that wasn't unusual for the university. With a high level of background magic does strange things to genes. As he stared around him, Rincewind could see other streams of grey bodies leaving.
Well, I'm gonna go into the store, so I'm just gonna leave the stream open, so have fun watching in silence. Not sure if the battery on the GoPro is going to hold or not, but maybe the tractor will move some snow and make something to watch. I think I'm gonna play some World of Warcraft when I get home before I have to pick up my daughter from school. Let's see if the batteries turn off the car. Won't allow me to watch how much battery the camera has. I'll go